Hi, welcome back to another live episode of Piercing with Scott, and we're going over all your questions. I'm going to try to answer as many of them as we can. Again, my name is Scott Wilkinson. I've been a professional body piercer since 1994, and I own a studio here in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's called Piercing Vegas. So if you're ever interested in getting pierced by me, you always need to set up an appointment. So call ahead, set up the appointment. You can probably go on our website, piercing.vegas, and you can find out some more information there. But anyways, we're answering questions today, and we're going to slowly get through these and try to get through as many as possible, time allotted. Of course, if you have questions, post it in the comment section. And of course, try to be as specific as you can with your questions, what piercing it is, how long have you had it, if you have quality jewelry, or if you even you think you did something to it recently. But we'll get you as soon as we can. And on the other side of the camera over here, is Jared. He is answering or asking a lot of the questions that you guys are typing in here. I'm going to try to follow along the chat here, but I'm going to try to answer at the same time. So, Jared, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's another day, another bunch of questions.
All right. So we're going to start off with this piercing, this question.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a lot of oral piercings you're against because there's a big potential for damage there, biting things, wearing enamel away. Are Smiley piercings safe, in your opinion?
Smiley piercings. For the most part, they can be safe, but a lot of this is kind of up to the person who's wearing the piercing. Because when we start off, generally we're going to start off something with a bead. I don't ever start any sort of ring, seamless ring, because if that little tiny gap gets in the middle of the piercing, it causes the irritation. Sometimes the skin even closes up on it. So I start with a ring with a bead, preferably like a circular barbell, just so you can check the tightness of those beads. And once it's healed up, these heal super quick. Change to a seamless ring or a segment ring or a little clicker of some sort. Once they're more flat, there's less chance for damage. But when that bead is rubbing right up against your gums, up against your teeth, you can get erosion or any sort of, is damage done to that area. So keep your eye on it. Now, if you take your jewelry after a while and you lift it up and it looks like you have a huge indent where the jewelry's resting in there, it will do more damage over time. So you need to be careful and watch out for it. If you think it's doing damage, talk to your piercer. Chances are you're probably going to need to take it out. These ones generally are pretty temporary because the tissue is so soft and it's easy for it to migrate out. So they don't last long in the first place, but watch out so it doesn't do the damage to your gums or your teeth.
Now, kind of a sub question to that question.
Sure.
Someone asked, does wearing plastic jewelry in a Smiley make it less likely to do teeth or gum damage?
Does wearing what?
Plastic jewelry rather than metal jewelry.
No, I mean, it a little tiny bit, but the thing is there's still going to be the erosion and the irritation of the jewelry pressing up against it. It's not necessarily the metal, but it's something being there. It's a foreign object, and that's where the body's like, it's being irritated, it's trying to grow away from where it's being irritated. So
now, Another question about retainers. Jennifer is getting panoramic dental x-rays and needs to put a retainer into a nose ring.
Okay.
What do you recommend? What's the best retainer to use in that situation?
I personally prefer the quartz or the type of glass retainers. They're generally fairly invisible, and most medical procedures don't have a problem with it unless they're looking for something in that specific area and it's actually blocking what they're trying to look for. The big thing is to try to get the metal out of there, but I like the glass ones the best. And like I said, the quartz is my personal favorite. So, but yeah. And if you know you have a medical procedure coming up, it's not a good idea to get the piercing and put it in as soon as that thing comes up. You need to be pretty well healed up before you wear those retainers and not cause any damage, but you do what you got to do.
Bobbert says, I want to stretch my septum, but I'm not sure. So what are the pros and cons, in your opinion, of septum stretching? Is that something you think is a good idea?
Yeah. As far as the pros and cons, stretching it up is one of the pros. I'd say is it's not very painful. It's a fairly easy process if you take it easy. If you overstretch it, it's going to be very, very painful. So if it hurts, you're going too fast and you're doing damage. But in general, if you stretch properly, it's a faster stretch and it's not too bad if it was pierced in the proper spot. So that's one of the pros. It does shrink up for the most part. I wore mine as 2 gauge for many, many years. And I can probably get it to a 6 gauge now. I might be able to slide something in there, but they do shrink up for the most part. One of the cons about going to larger sizes is you're really limiting yourself on the jewelry, because once you can either wear just a large jewelry or you can stack a whole bunch of pieces of jewelry in there. It kind of depends on the look you're going for. Most jewelry, clickers, fancy stuff you're going to find is going to be in the 16 or 14 gauge range. You can get some custom stuff made, but most of it's going to be in that size. So depends on the look you're going for. If you want that big circular barbell or a big seam ring in there, real bold, awesome. It's a great look, but it's tough to wear the little small rings because they're just going to twist around and kind of lay loose.
So Alexander recently stretched lobes up from 7G to 6G. One of the lobes is fine and happy, but the other hurt a bit and started bleeding. Took out the tunnel, cleaned the area, sized back down. Any other tips?
Sounds like you're doing the right thing. Sometimes you can do a stretch, and generally there's that window of when it's safe to stretch, but sometimes our body just says, no, we're not ready yet. If you listen to your body like you did, props to you. Downsize, back off, let it relax. Maybe in a couple of weeks when everything's back to normal, it'll go right into place and you shouldn't have any problems. Sometimes that second stretch around is much, much easier. The big thing is listening to your body and taking it out, downsizing, letting it relax. Hopefully there wasn't any bleeding or any irritation like that. So a couple days and you should be back to normal. But you did the right thing. You did the right thing. And before you stretch up to the next size, just start massaging and kind of playing with it, and that'll help loosen up that tissue too. So good job.
All right. So we have another question. 1-month-old nostril, pierced it with a hoop, and it developed a granuloma. Now, we got looked at warning, slightly gross pictures, but we have like pictures of what Google says granulomas are, and it's pretty much like what you would describe as a bump.
Yeah.
What do you recommend with a bump on a nostril at a month from a hoop?
Go back to your piercer, have them put in a stud. You're going to be dealing with that bump for a long, long time. Now, the thing is we're not medical professionals, so we're not really allowed to say it's a bump or a keloid or a granuloma or any of that. But in general, it's irritation is what causes these to happen, and the ring can spin and rotate. So if you can stop that spinning and rotating and get a more stationary object like a straight stud in there, you should be able to get rid of the bump, let it heal and relax, and you can wear that ring without that bump happening again in the future once you're fully healed up. It's pretty rare someone can get pierced with a ring and not really have any problems or bumps or irritation. Once in a blue moon it happens, but odds generally aren't in your favor. So start with a stud and you'll have much, much better luck. But like I was saying, find your piercer, go back to the stud, and just kind of keep cleaning it, keep babying it, and it should go back to normal. After several months, if that bump is still just huge, sometimes it's even easier just to take it out and start over. So it's up to you when you want to make that choice.
Caden just wanted to thank you because they recently started their piercing apprenticeship, and you've been a huge inspiration to get them to this point. So,
congratulations. I'm excited for you. Good luck on your journey. That's cool.
So Madeline asks, do you prefer internally threaded or the Invictus pop-in, the threadless? That the pop-in, we usually refer to that as threadless jewelry.
Threadless jewelry, exactly. It really depends on the piercing. Most of the time, I'm going to prefer the threadless style of jewelry just because it's less maintenance. You don't have to touch it. And the more you can keep your hands off, the better off your piercing is going to be. You can adjust those pins to get really, really tight, so they should not come undone. Once in a while they do, but for the most part, they do stay in. And it's Invictus makes them. There's a bunch of companies who make them now, but it is originally started by Neo Metal. They were the first company who started this threadless line. Now everyone has a version of it, but it's cool stuff. Now I do want to say this. Don't ever put them inside oral piercings. Like, you don't want those pins inside your mouth. You don't want a tongue piercing, curved barbells like for Smileys, for tongue frenums. Definitely don't put them in there. Those need to be threaded because you don't want to swallow one of those pins. Yeah.
So you feel like in the case in a mouth, a threaded is more secure?
Oh yeah, I would never even put a threadless piece inside the mouth, because if they were to swallow that piece of jewelry, you get that real sharp pin as opposed to like a bead.
Oh,
it's just danger in case the worst case scenario happens.
So you're talking about in both cases, someone swallows the bead.
Yeah.
You're saying you'd rather swallow a completely round bead than a bead with a
lot of these
sharp
companies
pin on it.
even have this disclaimer on. They're not made for oral piercings inside the mouth. So
it's interesting. In my experience, I've only ever lost threaded beads.
Yeah. Now I want a little disclaimer here. Like I will do a lip piercing with a threadless piece because if the pin were to fall out, it's going to fall on the outside. You shouldn't be eating that. Then you'd have the normal labret, like an internally threaded labret on the inside. The oral piercings I'm talking about are completely inside the mouth, like a tongue piercing, Smiley, Frowny, or a tongue web. Or the God forbid snake eyes or something like that.
So Matthew's got a question.
Sure.
Got his nose pierced last year. Thinking about getting his labret pierced. Wants to know, how does the pain compare? Nose piercing versus labret, more or less?
They're different. They're both similar as far as pain level, but the nostril is going to be more of a sharp pinch that the pain goes away fairly quickly. Now, the lip piercing is going to be more of a dull pinch, but you're going to deal with a swollen lip for 3 to 5 days on average afterwards, sometimes up to a week. So it kind of balances out. I mean, the nostril might be a quicker, sharper, but the lip is going to be longer lasting. So that's kind of the difference. It's more the healing as opposed to the initial pinch. But biting your lip generally hurts more than the piercing does if done properly.
Elijah,
the piercing, that is.
Elijah wants to know when to expect the next What Should I Get Pierced?
We're editing that right now, and we will have that being released tomorrow. Tomorrow by 10 a.m. Eastern time.
What a
Eastern,
very specific answer he's giving.
Yeah.
All right.
That was a good question. I like the ones that have the specific answers for like that.
Bay the Slime Queen says, howdy, Scott and Jared.
Hi.
What is your opinion on Bioplast or bioflex materials?
Okay. I'm not a crazy huge fan of these. These are like a combination of like a plastic piece of jewelry, generally mixed in with like a threadless piece where you take a little plastic piece and it pops in. Sometimes they stay in, sometimes they don't. I'm not a fan of wearing plastic jewelry long term. I'm not sure what kind of research has been done as far as this, but I find that there's sharper edges, and a lot of piercings don't seem like they heal very nicely with these in there. So I won't pierce with them. Now, it might be a great idea for a retainer or something like that if you want to put something in there and not worry about the little O-rings or things like that, but not a fan for the long-term wearing. Now, if you're really worried about chipping your teeth or doing damage like that, make sure you get pierced in the proper spot and downsize your jewelry, and that will minimize the damage of chipping your teeth. Putting plastic in there, you still can do the damage. So not as much with the Bioplast, but it does damage to the piercing. So.
All right. Brenda got a conch piercing, still sort of the touch after 2 weeks. Is that normal?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of this I'm going to probably blame on the mask. As soon as we had to start wearing the mask mandate and all those bands are going right back there, that's the one piercing that got affected the worst, in my opinion. So with the new piercing and you're wearing the mask, and if that band is going right up against there, it's going to stay sore for a long time. Now,
what's a long time?
Months and months until you stop irritating it. So good question. Now here's where my answer is. There's mask extenders, which can kind of, instead of bringing it around your ears, it goes maybe a lower around your neck, where some people wear a hat and put buttons on there. I think I even have a video talking about the different options if you're having problems with the masks and the piercing. But even just sleeping on it wrong, bumping it one little time, it can get irritated. I hope you have a stud in there. If you have a ring in there, it's going to stay sore and irritated for a long, long time, because rings are going to spin and rotate, pulling the crusties inside, and that's what can cause a lot of tenderness. So hopefully you have the stud in there. Hopefully the mask isn't getting caught on there. And if you're cleaning with the wound wash spray, it should start feeling better soon once it stops being bumped or hit.
Now, and I'm sure sort of the touch is like a figure of speech, but don't touch it. Also, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I mean, because we're going to be sleeping on it. It is going to get bumped a little bit. But yeah, don't touch it unless you have threaded jewelry and you have to check the tightness. But then you should be washing your hands before you touch it. So there is an exception for touching, but generally don't touch. Yes. All right. Say hi to everyone.
Okay.
So far, thanks for sending all your questions. We're working our way through them right now.
So we have M here, says, hi, love your videos. And she has a bump on her industrial, I believe is what we're looking at there. So bump on the industrial, can't get it off. It doesn't hurt at all, and she cleans it regularly, but thinking it's probably the over-ear headphones that are required for work.
It absolutely could be the over-the-ear earphones. Now, industrial piercings are really, really important that they're pierced properly. And sometimes even the earphones with a badly placed industrial could be part of the problem. So did the bumps happen once you started wearing the earphones? Were they there the whole time? Did you go to a good quality piercer? These are the factors. I'm going to pull out an ear to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So let's go over to this other camera, maybe.
Uh-oh. Camera one.
No other camera. Okay, we're going to stay on this camera here. So like for an ear industrial, normally you're trying to go pretty perpendicular to the skin, kind of similar to this. But if one of these angles is like this, and then the other angle is down like this, they twist the ear trying to get it back into the normal position. Once that tissue's been contorted and twisted like that, that can cause bumps that can never really go away. That's why it's important to find a quality piercer, make sure it's pierced properly. But like you're saying, if you are wearing the ear things and they're constantly pressing on there, that's an irritation that could be causing the problem. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't know. Maybe finding different earphones. See if you can wear them on the other side of your ear. I don't know. Good luck to you, but careful with that.
Okay. What is the best type of ring you would recommend for piercings? They have a nostril and a conch, and they're patiently waiting to change to a ring. They'd like to know, you recommend a clicker, a seamless, or a captive bead ring? Like, is there pros and cons, or is it just a matter of style?
It's pretty much a matter of style. If you're going to be changing it out earlier, where it's jumping the gun, I'm going to say you have to go with a captive bead ring or a circular barbell, because those beads are going to prevent those seams or gaps from getting in the side. So if your piercing is still a little bit irritating, and those gaps get inside, that's going to cause a lot of problems. If your piercing's fully healed, it's all aesthetics. It's all about the look you're going for. So put in the type of jewelry that you want to wear once it's healed, and that's the best option.
So Holly has double bumps on a bridge piercing.
Ooh, okay. I'm guessing they've probably been there from the get-go. Bridge piercings get a lot of bumps and can heal really fast, but can also take a really, really long time to heal. So the first thing I'm going to say is the bar too long or too short? If it's too short and the beads are getting sucked inside for the swelling and whatnot, that's going to cause those bumps to happen. And double bumps, I'm guessing one on each side, or is it one on top and one on, it's hard to say. But if the jewelry is too long or too short, get the appropriate size jewelry in there. Maybe changing it up to titanium if you have steel in there, because the lightweight can make a big, big difference. I noticed that with mine. And not everyone has the anatomy to get pierced. Some people will have that nice prominent ridge, but if your bone goes all the way up to the top and they just lifted the skin and now it's pressing up against the bone, you could eventually get bone erosion, and that would also cause that pressure causing those bumps to happen. So if it looks like it's sitting natural in there, it's probably the jewelry size. If it looks like those skins getting raised up, that could be because it's pierced too deep and it's pressing up against the bone and whatnot. So you might want to talk to your piercer about that. Go in and have them take a look. Otherwise, keep cleaning with the proper stuff. Yeah, you need to talk to your piercer about that one.
All right. So Pancake has a problem, and it might actually be a pretty common problem. That I'm reading, it makes a lot of sense. So everyone's been wearing masks for a long time. So you've been able to get secret piercings underneath your masks that your boss from work doesn't know about. So
absolutely.
Pancake has gotten a vertical labret and a Medusa done. Now, at some point, these mask restrictions are getting lifted and the mask has to disappear, and these are not necessarily allowable piercings at work. So the question is it okay to take that jewelry out for 8 hours at a time while at work, assuming it's pretty well healed?
Mm-hmm. Generally, no. And you are absolutely onto something, which is going to be a crazy time when the masks aren't required anymore, because everyone has those piercings and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to have this. Either everyone's going to lose their piercings because, well, some people can leave them out. Some people can, they start closing within minutes. You don't know until you try. So maybe if it's fully healed up, maybe take it out for 5 minutes. If it's tough getting back in, you're probably not a good candidate for leaving out for long periods of time. Now, some people are going to be able to get away with retainers. The best style retainer, in my opinion, is by Neometal. They make a kind of a flat, a non-gloss threadless top in some neutral skin tone colors. So for nostrils, if you have like a gem in there, like a threadless piece, you remove the gem and you put this on there, and it's going to match your skin tone enough to where it almost looks like a mole or just a discoloration on your skin. They come in different sizes and they don't reflect light. So this is a really, really cool option. Now, another option is maybe buy a cheaper top or a cheaper nostril screw and use like nail polish. Don't get it on the wearing surface, but you can put that on the top of your bead, and that can kind of cover and hide this as much as possible. A lot of times those plastic retainers or the glass retainers are going to stick out and they are going to be visible. So if you can camouflage some nice, appropriate fitting jewelry, that's going to be your best bet. Most of the time, if you're taking it out for work, putting it in at home, out for work, it's just a matter of time before it gets upset and you lose your piercing. So try to find a retainer that will work. Plan ahead because that time is coming up.
All right. So question about a lobe piercing. So an old second lobe piercing suddenly got a bump and it's swollen. But right now the back of the ear is also hella swollen. And right below it, the area on the neck hurts too. Could it be a swollen lymph node? Like, does that all relate?
Sometimes irritations for piercings can affect the lymph node areas, and I've seen the whole area swell up. My question to you is, are you getting any drainage out of there? Because sometimes if everything's getting trapped inside there, that can be an issue. So a really hot soak might not be a bad idea. Don't burn yourself, but get some really hot water and actually submerge your piercing and hopefully drain some of that stuff out of there. Now, I don't want you squeezing and trying to get stuff out of there either, because that's going to be more irritating. Just let the water do the work naturally. Just the hot water soak is all you want to do. Now, you're also going to hear people say, do the salt water soak. If you mix the wrong salt in there, that can cause more issues. You're generally better off using just regular salt, or not regular salt, but regular water. Don't use the salt at all. And if you need to use any sort of salt water, use the wound wash spray to clean that off afterwards, and that might help heal it up. So, but if it's all trapped like that and it starts getting really bad and painful, you might want to seek out a doctor, but start soaking. See if you can get some of that stuff out of there first.
All right.
Good luck to you. Ouch.
Emerald says, hey, love your videos.
Thank you. Hi, Emerald.
Question: how long should they wait between stretches for a septum? Got it pierced at a 12 at the start of July. How do they know when it's time to start stretching, and how often can they size up?
When it's ready. Septums, when they're pierced properly, is such a thin mucous membrane that they typically are able to stretch fairly easily. Now, you'll know when you've reached that maximum tightness and you don't want to go anymore. So don't hurt yourself and don't push it. Now, if you have that 10 gauge, if it's a circular barbell at home, you're going to be able to take that one out. It should be moving freely on its own. You should be able to take it out and see if that 10 slides right in there. Or maybe even do this in the shower. So you like soak your nose in some warm water or something, like the heat or the steam. That'll loosen things up. But a 10 should almost fall in on your own. You might not necessarily need the taper. Tapers can end up ripping and tearing. If it goes in on its own, you're way better off. So try the shower on your own. It's not that big of a deal. Little tip for you. If you drop the bead, put your foot over the drain and don't go for the bead, because let the bead come to you. Don't let it go down the drain.
Now that's a useful one. That's true knowledge right there. Everyone.
That's experience talking. You know, I can't tell you how many.
Chase the bead, you're going to chase it around.
You do, and it runs all over. Just go for the drain. It's not going to move on you.
Stomp that drain.
Put it and let the bead come to you, and just pick up the bead.
Wisdom.
Oh,
all right. Bunny wants to know your opinion on tongue scoops. Feels like it's not at the tip, so there's no risk of damaging the teeth, but wants to know whether you think it's a good idea or not.
I'm just not a fan of them. I have mixed opinions, I guess, because you're right. It's not going to do as much damage against your teeth, but it's most likely going to reject out. It's going to reject out. It's going to leave a larger scar. But I know taste buds can kind of regenerate to a certain degree, but at the same time, it's just creating a large horizontal or vertical scar across your tongue. I don't know if I've ever seen one fully heal up or really look good. The other thing is you can't really add gems or anything fancy in there, because if you added gems, the gems point kind of outwards off to the side, so no one will really see it anyways. So if you're looking for that look, you're better off going with the venoms, in my opinion. vertical, straight through the tongue like that.
All right. Chase C has a problem. Never noticed that the lobe piercing holes weren't perfectly even until they'd already been stretching for a while. So now we're at a 4 gauge and feels like one of the piercing holes is further back and further down. Their piercer has suggested like wearing an uneven amount of weight to try to solve this problem. Do you think that's a good idea? Is there anything that a piercer or that they could do to fix this?
Okay, I was told this a while ago, and I want to draw something for you, see if I can do this. Now, the secret is to try to use either teardrops or create your own type of teardrop type stretching. Now, when you're stretching with a round plug, okay, you're stretching symmetrically evenly around this way. Now, if I add a second one or we create a little thin point, that's the point where it might stretch in that direction a little bit more. Now, the way you can do this is if you have a normal plug and you can add a second plug next to it like so. So now if you take a little bit of tape, you could use a little Teflon tape and connect the two and create that teardrop. Now you want the teardrop, I'm guessing it's thin on the bottom and you want to stretch up. Get the teardrop in the direction where you want that to stretch. Now adding a little bit of like that should kind of stretch it up in that direction a little bit. I don't know how much this is going to work, but it was suggested a while ago and it seemed to work for some people. So that's an idea for you.
Throw up an example. Here's some Google images of the teardrop shaped plug.
You found some? Yeah.
And that is kind of like in case anyone's having a tough time visualizing what you're saying.
Perfect.
So you kind of point that arrow the way you wanted it to go.
Exactly. A lot of times these ones here are pointed straight up and down because that's aesthetically how it wants to look. But you could also get it if you turned it so pointed more towards the helix, the outside of the ear, that allows you to kind of point it up in that direction too. As far as wearing weights to thin out the other side, I don't think that's ever really a good idea. Weights don't generally help you stretch. They're meant to show the elongation of the lobe. You can't wear the weights generally too long term for them to be truly, truly effective. If you were to go that route and you want it to be thinner, I would say wear your plug in your one ear where you want it to be thinner, and you could put a captive bead ring through the bottom in between the plug and your earlobe, and that's going to create thinner spots where it might cause it to kind of catch up to the thinness of the other. But again, you're better off trying to stretch the other and using, I don't know, it depends on how far they're off. That's a tough call. That's a really tough call. But those are some suggestions for you. Good luck to you. And massaging it, keep that tissue alive really, really helps, especially if it's real thin.
And Emerald from earlier, stretching the septum, the plan is to put a spike through it as it gets larger.
Awesome. Those spikes are pretty cool. They come in many different sizes. So I even have some in my shop. I think the small is like an 8 gauge made out of stone. And I'm guessing they're wanting like the septum tusks. So pretty cool.
So question from Bam. Is there any problem switching back and forth between two different sizes? Like, so they have 7mm plugs and 8mm plugs. If they continue to stretch, they're going to go up to 8 this month, but they still have a lot of 7mm plugs that they really like. So is there a problem with going back and forth between the two?
No, it just makes it real tough to stretch up if you want to go beyond that. Be careful that your jewelry's not too loose where your plugs are going to fall out. One thing that I did back in the day that worked really well is you can take those silicone plugs, whether they're the thicker ones or those like skinlets, and a lot of times you can get those to wrap around your existing plug, which is almost like adding a thicker layer where it sticks in there a little better and it makes it so they're less likely, they're gonna be tighter up to the next size. So if those things can fit around there, sometimes wrapping some tape around there to kind of save them. Those things can help. The big thing is just be careful it doesn't fall out. And if you are planning on stretching bigger and you're going back to the smaller and bigger, it needs to stay that bigger size for long periods for them to relax to go up to the next size. So
Bunny asked a question that has been asked before, but
sure,
let's be thorough about it. Like, what do you recommend for aspiring piercers? So what types of stuff should they be learning on their own? Is there value? Should they be like trying to pierce themselves or pierce their friends? Is that something you look highly upon or you're against?
I myself am not a big fan of people who have tried piercing themselves. There would be the exception of someone who might have tried 1 or 2 times and realized, I can't do this, I need an apprenticeship. cool. They learned and they kind of move. But people who keep trying and messing people up, you're developing bad habits. I'm not a big fan of that. So I'd rather have someone more green. Now, someone who's really inspired might seek out a course like the Fakir Intensives course. There's a couple other training courses where they're not full-on apprenticeships, but they're classes and they teach you good habits, the bloodborne pathogens, different techniques, the different jewelry, the different piercings. And it's like a starter apprenticeship. It gets you really on the right track. Now, as far as like training at home, get your bloodborne pathogens course, understand the dangers of the diseases and how to be safe about things. Get your first aid course, your CPR. The more you can do about being health and safety is going to be your best bet. Then you need to find a piercer who's qualified to teach you, someone who's skilled, been doing it for a long time, and isn't just about to work you. There's a lot of people who just take on apprenticeships just to abuse the work aspect, say, I get this free work for so long and you don't end up being a piercer. So get someone who's going to teach you something.
One spot where I think I've seen people struggle is a knowledge of fractions. Like 5/8 and 7/16, you should know which is bigger, and definitely the conversions between them.
You would never think that fractions are that important, but it is really important, especially if you want to do custom industrials. Like, I have to have an inch long here. I have to have 3/8 of an inch up to the bend here. Each bend you get like 1/8 of an inch. Add that to the thing, so you have 2 bends. But you have to add all these fractions, and knowing how to do that using common denominators, and there's a lot to it. So understand your fractions. Great point. And now also the conversions to millimeters, fractions to millimeters. Another good thing. There's a bunch of little things that would be.
So if you knew that coming in, you're just going to have that much of an easier time when your piercer starts rolling off that he needs a 5/8 inch ring. He or she needs a 5/8 inch ring. Or needs an 11 millimeter this or that. You know what's going on.
Yeah. We'll add this to the list. Next week, I'm going to think about it. I'll put a list of things that would be good to learn as a aspiring piercer, and we'll try to have that for you in the next live stream and give you the list of things that would be good to know if you're really serious about this. So
very cool.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That'll be fun.
All right. So Nicole says, hi, Scott. Finally made it here for the first time for a live.
Hi, Nicole. Welcome.
All right. Glitch wants to know, can I eat spicy food with a tongue piercing?
I wouldn't suggest it right away. Listen to your body. I know you're probably used to a little bit of spice, but the inside of that, like an open wound, isn't really ready for that. If you get real spicy food inside an open wound like that, it's going to stay swollen and irritated for much, much longer. If you can just avoid it for at least a week or so, it will help a ton. But do what you got to do. You'll just pay the consequences of a longer, more swollen tongue.
Okay. Nicole has a question. Have a bit of a wide nose with a little stud in it already. Do you recommend a septum piercing? Do you feel like that aesthetically would likely look?
It depends on the shape of your nose. I mean, you said it's wide, but it depends if there's enough room for there. Generally, most people can get away with the septum piercing really well if your septum is centered to your lip. Now, if you have a deviated septum and it's moved off to the side and we pierce it, it's going to accentuate the deviated septum or the crookedness of your nose. So that might not be, that's going to be the only time I'm ever going to say, like, it might not work as best for you, and then a nostril piercing will work better. But if your septum's in the middle, yeah, you can probably get away with it. Probably not a problem at all.
All right.
Whoa, another camera. Sweet. Hi over there.
Question from our friend Coke.
Sure.
Wants to know about to get a Frowny. What do you think? Recommended?
Yeah, I don't see why not. The thing about a Frowny, for those of you who don't know, is it's like a Smiley, but it's on the bottom side of your lip, and it's there's a little tiny web inside there. If you have the web for it and you can actually have the jewelry, go for it. Now the thing is it's not too often people will see this. That's why they call the Frowny. Your lip has to actually almost come out, and you might be able to show something off. So if you're getting this piercing, it's probably just for you. Which camera am I looking at? I'm looking over
that
here.
One's right there. Also, I'm getting a warning that our connection is unstable. And
I'm sorry.
We may or may not be live right now.
Okay.
But we are still live, so we'll go.
All right.
All right. So, getting eyebrow pierced next week. What do we expect pain-wise from an eyebrow piercing?
Eyebrow piercing. I think it's personally one of the easiest ones you can get done. Eyebrow piercing, a shot of the doctor, I think hurts way less. I've had my eyebrow pierced maybe a couple dozen times now, and they're some of the easiest ones I think I've ever had. So no real worries. The only thing I would say about an eyebrow piercing, am I looking over here? Yeah, I am. The only thing about an eyebrow piercing is sometimes you get a black eye. Not from the piercer punching you, from hitting a small little capillary, small little vein in there, and that might make the blood spread around, giving you, that little black eye or that small bruise. So that's the only thing that can happen, but it's generally not too painful.
Any tips for someone who's going to stretch their lobes for the first time? So they've still got just regular super small and we're taking the first
Yes,
step.
I have a really good tip. Watch my video on stretching.
That's cheap.
Little self-promotion.
I like that.
No, yes, I do have some recommendations. Number one, don't hurt yourself. A proper stretch doesn't hurt. People always say, oh, I'm tough, I can take it. They just kind of force it. You're doing damage. You're ripping and tearing. You're going to make it way tougher in the long run. So it should never hurt. So the second thing is a month and a half to 2 months between each stretch. So right now, if you have normal earlobe piercings, it might be 18 gauge, maybe a 16 gauge. So if you made it up to the 14 and that jewelry was tight in there, give it a month and a half to 2 months. Once you get to that point, if you pull down on your jewelry a little bit, you can almost see a gap or almost light going through there. Then you're able to stretch up to the next size. Again, it shouldn't hurt. You need to leave the jewelry in the whole time. If you're taking it out at night and putting it back in the morning, it's like you're re-stretching it every day. The jewelry needs to stay in there so the skin can relax so you can go up to the next size. Don't hurt yourself.
Is the surface tragus anatomy based, or can anybody get it? Have you seen people who are not a candidate?
I have turned people away for the tautness or tightness of the skin on the front. I don't know if you can see here, but like I can actually grab my skin and I need to be able to go perpendicular to the skin. Some people is going to be like this, where like I can't even grab anything here. And if I, and I can't really scoop it to fit in the surface bar properly. So if the skin doesn't separate and I can't pinch the tissue up, I'm not actually going to do the piercing for you. There are some methods where they say like punch and stretch, where you can actually make things like that happen, but I haven't had very much luck with that. And that means removing tissue like 2 biopsy punches and then trying to connect the dots with a taper. It's a very extreme method. And like I said, I've had bad luck with it in the past. I won't do those anymore. So,
have you ever pierced a nasalang?
No, I don't know if I would. I've had requests for them, and I don't know if I would want to do that for someone. It's just, I don't know. I don't think I would.
A little too much. You don't want to smash that needle through the cartilage.
Yeah, it's straight through the cartilage. It would be. Yeah, they would have to be the very right person, but I doubt it. And
so,
no, I haven't.
Brock had their lobes reconstructed years ago, and they're really missing them. So do you think they'd be able to get them re-pierced and re-stretched? Like maybe not quite as big.
I feel ya. I've always wanted mine back. I actually had mine removed and then I tried re-piercing them. I never had any luck. I'm trying to figure something out to do with my lobes. So I feel for you. Yes, you can get them re-pierced again. As far as stretching, I don't know how that would go because the tissue is different and it's mostly scar tissue. So if you wanted to go big, I would say maybe even pierce it at a larger size. But talk to the body modification artist who did this for you or your doctor and see what they say about it. If you talk to your doctor, they might laugh at you.
Like whoever closed it up.
Yeah, whoever closed it.
Yes. Like, yeah,
like really? Yeah, see you in another year. Yeah.
So we have a fan here who had a Helix pierced. It's been over 6 months and it still hurts so much. Is there anything that can be done?
A Helix piercing and it still hurts. Okay, so there are many, many factors when a piercing is not healing. Number one, is it quality jewelry? Are you having an allergic reaction to it? Is there any bumps or is it discharging a lot? Now, if you don't know if it's quality jewelry, seek out some titanium studs, like a labret, where it's flat on the back so you can sleep on it, and it's the appropriate length that is giving you the right amount of room for the swelling. You should be at the maximum swelling right now if you're still swollen at all. Now, the second thing is proper aftercare. Don't be putting anything else on there like peroxide, rubbing alcohol, Neosporin. a lot of those other chemicals will cause problems. You just got to let your body heal and try to leave it alone. Now, if you have a headset that's pressing up against it, you're sleeping on it every single night. If you have a hair product that might be getting in there, there's a lot of factors. So you need to find the irritant, get rid of what's irritating, whether you're not sleeping on it, find a pillow that kind of wraps around your, find something so it heals properly. But maybe change up your jewelry to higher quality, and sometimes less is more. You might be over cleaning it too. I know we always think that like maybe the more I clean it, the better off it's going to be. We got to let our bodies do their job too. So if there's crusties on there, get those crusties off there. Otherwise, I would say try to leave it be. I hope that helps. Good luck to you, because that's really rough when they take that long to heal. Yeah.
All right. Rachel's question. Got a dermal anchor placed on the upper forehead near the hairline. In your experience, is that area near the hairline going to be like trouble because of shampoo, oil, sweat, and things? Unfortunately, Rachel seems to be rejecting.
Looking at, I can't find my hairline, but I'm assuming it's like somewhere up here. It can work. It just depends on if you raise your eyebrows, if there's movement in that area. If the hair's wrapping around there all the time, that's going to cause irritation, probably cause it to reject more. I don't have very much tissue here, so that would be a factor for me too, is like if there's not enough tissue, that could also cause it to reject.
By tissue, you mean like depth?
Depth,
like how
yeah.
thick
Because like how
the
close is the scalp, the bone right there? Yeah.
Skull.
So,
okay.
But if there's enough room, I mean, it could be totally fine for you. It's just whether your hair's wrapping around there. If you're worried about that, shampoos, soaps, conditioners, you need to rinse really, really well. And then maybe when you get out, that's when you need to use your wound wash spray. Get it directly up underneath there, an inch away, and spray to try to clean out all that extra cleaning stuff. That's the best bet. You shouldn't really have a problem, though, I don't think.
And if it already is showing signs of rejecting, like what can we do? Is there anything to reverse this? Like what's the point of no return? When would you recommend getting it out to minimize scarring? Like if that ends up being what Rachel has to do.
If you seriously think it's rejecting and it's moved, go get it removed. Because if it's starting to surface, a lot of times it doesn't like, oh, it'll settle in better later. It's either going to stay there or come out further. And once it comes all the way out, the more it rejects, the bigger the scar is going to be. A lot of times if it just starts rejecting, a lot of times we can get those out with just the minimalist of scars. But if that whole foot ends up popping out, it does leave a bigger scar. So
that makes sense.
That's a factor. It's like, you don't want a big scar right in the middle of your forehead.
All right. Alfredo has a question.
Hi, Alfredo.
Generally, it seems like you don't recommend getting pierced with hoops, that you always are saying get pierced with a stud first, heal the stud up, then swap to the hoop. Alfredo's question is it okay with a lobe to get pierced with the hoop and not have to worry about the change? Just start with a hoop?
Yes. Here's my 2 cents on this. If I get kids who are coming in and getting earlobe piercings, I will not offer a ring on anyone under 18 years old. Once you're a little older, that's your decision. Now, earlobes heal better and faster than most all other piercings. So, yes, it's going to prolong the healing process, but it's so fast already, whatever, a couple extra weeks. If you want that look of rings and that's what you need and you're going to be most excited about it, you're going to heal it, you're going to take care of it better, then that's the better way to go. But if you can heal it with studs, then change to the rings, generally these heal nicer. But I will pierce with rings, but they have to have a bead. Single bead like a captive bead ring or the circular barbell with the 2 beads. I will never pierce with a seamless ring, a clicker, or any sort of hinged ring that way.
Because that hinge going.
Yeah.
Now, because of the squishiness of an earlobe, like are piercing bumps rare on earlobes in your opinion, or do you still see them?
You still see them. Even with a stud, any sort of irritation on any piercing can get that bump. We are more prone to see them on nostrils and helix piercings. Nostrils because they get caught on towels and shirts. It's just they're a magnet for that. And the helix because it takes so long to heal that there's a longer window for that bump to happen. Now, earlobe piercings have that smaller window, but we're still hitting them on things. But at the same time, our earlobes are a lot more soft and pliable, so they can move without taking as much damage. Now, if you're wearing the ring and it's spinning and rotating, you're pulling crusties in, and that would be the only real irritation, given a couple extra weeks to heal.
Now, Tracy got her lobes done 5 days ago. Pretty normal that they're still swollen and still a little painful?
Yeah.
Itchy even? Because itchy is a sign of healing generally, right?
Itchy is a sign of healing. And the thing is, 3 to 5 days is the average amount of time for most piercings to swell before the swelling kind of goes down, with the exception of cartilage. Cartilage takes forever for it to go down, but earlobes, it's not that uncommon for them to be this swollen. Just be careful you're not sleeping on them, touching them, playing with them. Make sure you're cleaning them properly. If you have crusties that are on the inside and it's causing that irritation, they will stay swollen longer, so make sure your jewelry and your piercing's clean.
Rose has a question. I'm interested in the answer. Has a circulation issue, specifically Raynaud's, that requires like the extremities get cold.
Okay.
So Rose has to wear hats and earmuffs a lot of the time to stay warm. Do you feel like that is going to impact their ability to heal ear piercings? Because it's a circulation issue, less blood.
Yeah, exactly. I would say earlobe piercings is going to prolong, just like that last question. It might take a little bit longer to heal. As far as cartilage goes, if it's something that's a concern like that, you should really talk to your doctor, because cartilage piercings can take 6 months to a year to heal. And if you already have bad circulation, that's why they take so long. That could be even longer yet. Now, there's other factors. Do you have really thin ears? Are they really thick and dense? You know, because if they're thin, that's less tissue to heal, and it still could be healed in a relatively fast time. But if you have bad circulation and you have really thick cartilage, it might even take 2 years to fully heal. So I would talk to your doctor and see if this is a good idea if you really have those circulation problems to that caliber. That's a good question. I've never been asked that one before, but that's the way I would approach it.
All right. Daphne, just wanted to let you know, asked about nipple piercings in a previous live stream. I just wanted to let you know that they went ahead and got them, in love with them. Everything's perfect.
Congratulations.
Thank you for the info.
Absolutely. I love my nipple piercings. I will probably have mine forever. Information for everyone right there. They're great.
All right. Trollguard says, hi, Scott. Just started their training and as a training as a piercer, and they love it. Do you have any tips for specifically placing the receiving tube and then hitting it? They hit the side when they did a nose piercing, and so they actually had to end up re-piercing it. So that's kind of a piercer-specific question.
It is a piercer-specific question. Receiving tubes come in many different sizes. For nostrils, I generally use a larger receiving tube, closer to a 2, maybe even a 0 gauge. For like septums, I'm going to go way smaller, like down to an 8 gauge. It's a smaller little window. But generally, you can almost feel, like for nostrils, I stick the receiving tube on the inside and I press out, and I'll feel on their nose, and I can feel where I'm creating a drum head, and you can feel where it's at. Same thing with the septum. You know, like you can put your finger on one side and use the back end of the needle or a taper, and you can feel where it goes, put the receiving tube, and kind of line things up that way. Put yourself in a favorable position when you're doing the piercing where you can see the angles you need. If you haven't set up for a nostril piercing and you're kind of like trying to maybe try laying them down, maybe up at a 45, get on the other side of the table. There's many different ways to get the right results, as long as you can see all the angles you need. And with time, you'll get that feel a lot better. So yeah, have some good friends to practice on, and maybe try a different approach. And don't necessarily do the piercing. Practice with like a little Q-tip, you know, or something, and just kind of like feel around and maybe lay down. Have a friend. That's what I did. I've had many of friends laying down on the table, and I'm like, hey, I'm just kind of curious how this works, how this clamp, would this be better here? Is the rubber band better on the bottom than the top? There was so many things, and just experiment to find the best thing for you. That's with any job, I think. Yeah.
If you're striving for excellence.
Yeah, there is the best way that works for you. And what works for you doesn't necessarily work for someone else. So
Theodora is very observant and says they sometimes see that you have scars under your eyes. Is that because of some kind of piercing that you had in the past, or what are we looking at exactly?
Yes. It's okay, so the story is I used to have anti-eyebrow piercings on the corners of my eyes. They didn't work out, so I ended up taking them out. But I really liked the look of the scars. So I was thinking about doing piercings all the way across underneath both my eyebrows so I could have that look of the scars. And as time went on and nothing really happened, and a friend of mine, Nathan, came into town from Chicago, and I was living in Minnesota at the time. And he said, "Hey, Scott, I got this new branding machine called the Geiger machine. Do you want to get any branding done?" And at the time I was working, I was like, "Hey, give me some time. I'm going to think about this." The end of the day came by, and I don't know how I came up with the idea. I was like, I'll burn the scars across my eyes instead of getting them pierced. So later that night, we actually just branded up my eyes. And I actually have a video, and you can actually see it being done. It's it's a little longer video where I get suspended, and I also get my brandings right before. Not a good combo to do the two in a row like that. That was a little bit intense.
But yeah, that is neat. If you go find that video, I believe it's called like Piercing, Suspensions, and Brandings. Oh my.
Yeah, that's it.
You can actually see the branding he's talking about.
Close up being burned under my
VHS style.
So check it out.
Video and everything.
It was done a while ago. But yeah, and then they were done 2 times, and I really don't scar much, so this tissue kind of grew back. Then we had the idea of tattooing white outlines around the edges. So you can't really see them here.
If you slide up close to this camera, I bet we can focus in.
Kind of see if we can focus in. You can see them a little closer. I can't see it all where I need to be. So yeah, then we tattooed white around the edges. And then after we had the white outline, my friend Tom Strom, he was tattooing down my nose. Got some white dots down my nose. He's like, let's throw a little red shadow in there as well to kind of give it a little bit more of the depth. And I was like, I don't want to be messing around with all the, you see it all?
Yeah, I think you see it.
Okay, cool. Because I don't want to be messing around with tattooing my face. So let's, he's like, no one will be able to tell. And I trusted him, so I let him do it. And that's how we have little red shadows on the inside to give it a little bit of the depth. I tried real hard for the branding to work, and it just didn't take. But
so it's almost like art. You like shaded and shadowed it so that you could see more depth that you couldn't actually force the scar to happen.
Correct. I don't scar much at all. Like my eyebrow's been pierced like maybe a dozen times at least on each side. And like you see a little bit of scars, but they were all done with 14 gauge too. So yeah, I tried branding. It just didn't take. Same thing with my arm. Like all these are brandings as well, but they used to be tattooed red and we just kind of burned the red out of there. But most of them are sitting pretty flat against my arm. No scars. But way to be observant. That's a fun little story to tell you too.
All right. So Elusive Tune asks, Scott, big fan, is it possible to get piercings like a PA or similar if you're more of a grower than a shower?
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, I pierce most people at a pretty common size as far as a PA, which is like about 3/4 of an inch. Sometimes I'll go up to 7/8 of an inch. And if the jewelry's too big, you can always downsize to the more comfortable size, but you generally don't want to grow into something that's too small. So we pierce you at this size. And if and if it seems like the ring's too big and it's not comfortable, adjust the jewelry to that size. I do that for most male genital piercings, oversize the piercing. And then that way, like, hey, when I'm, grown, I have this much sticking out. Well, I know I put an 1 5/16 bar in you and we subtract the 1/4 inch, again, knowing your fractions, and we know the exact size bar we could so I mark down the size for them, and that's kind of how we go. And sometimes that happens with PAs. So if get pierced at your normal size, and then we find the size that fits you.
So it's a very custom experience.
Absolutely.
Like there's a size ring for you no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Good question.
What was the name again of the flesh-toned retainer company? You were saying the little tops that looked like a
those were Neometal.
Neometal. That's Neometal.
Correct. Neometal. And I think they're retainer tops. I don't remember exactly what they call them, but they don't have a high polish on the top, and they kind of have a matte, rougher finish, so it doesn't have the shine like most other body jewelry. Because most other jewelry, we're trying to get that high polish on there. They just reversed it and said, we don't want people to see this.
And so it looks like a natural discoloration on your skin.
Sometimes even going with just like a real dark brown, it just looks like a straight up mole. You can't accept a perfectly round mole, but
some of them are.
It fools people. It fools your piercer. Fooled me.
Fools your boss. That's the important question.
That's
right? So Kelly asks, what's the hardest place to pierce on the ear? And I don't know if they mean hardest for you to execute or most painful to receive. So answer both.
I will answer both. The most difficult, in my opinion, is probably going to be like a triple forward helix. Normally, I like just the 3 at the specific angles on a curvature area in a small area is difficult to get all those angles in properly so everything sits in the right area. Now, as far as individual piercings, it kind of depends on anatomy. I would probably say a doth or a rook might be the most difficult to do depending on the shape of the ear, but there's many different ways to approach each piercing. If this method doesn't work, find a different receiving tube, curve the needle different. So there's different ways for me to get the same results. So if you're experienced, you can find a way. Now, as far as receiving, what is the most difficult? I would say a snug. Of all the piercings to get, the snug is the least favorite, or the last one on the list I would want to get. It's the side of the ear, this little ridge right here. It's dense, it's thick, it's a long healing process. When you sleep on it, it hits your pillow first.
Pull up one of those ears and show us where a snug is.
Okay, good call, good call. The snug is going to be this ridge right here. Okay, normal people get the helix and the ridge on here, and some people have this super big ridge popping out just like that. Some people don't have as much of a ridge like this. I mean, there's enough of one, but that one would be too thin to actual pierce. And then looking at this one, this one's just, almost. But like I said, that first one is what we're looking for. But this is some dense cartilage. Some people will say that the conch going around this inner part of the bulb here is thicker, but I think that the snug hurts more. So that would be my least favorite piercing to get on the ear.
So do eyebrow piercings generally leave scars pretty easily? Do they reject easily? Olga's interested in getting one, but obviously, concerned about scarring.
Okay, so with eyebrow piercings, and if you're concerned about scarring, you probably shouldn't get the piercing. It will leave a little bit of a scar. Everyone scars differently. Now, if you pluck your eyebrows or anything like that, the skin is more exposed. Now, if you don't pluck your eyebrows and you have that hairline and that's where the piercing goes, that can kind of cover up the scars a little tiny bit. But look online, type in eyebrow scars, and you're going to see what I'm talking about, because people are going to have those little dots and those things, and you're not going to be able to get rid of it. You can get rid of the discoloration a little bit, but you're going to have that little divot, that little dimple of where the piercing used to be. Now, here's the thing. If you get an eyebrow piercing and it rejects all the way out, it will leave a huge scar right in your forehead. It's right there. It's going to be a large line. Sometimes your hair doesn't grow back through there. And it's a physical divot. You can get rid of the discoloration, but you're not going to get rid of the actual deformation of the actual eyebrow. So that's the biggest concern with eyebrow piercing. But if you're worried about even that little dimple, it will be there. So don't get it if that's the concern.
So for a horizontal eyebrow piercing, curved barbell, service bar, dermal anchors. Our friend here wants to do it, but it seems that the horizontal is more likely to reject than a normal vertical eyebrow in their observation.
Correct. A lot of it's going to be placement and pierced properly. Now, if you have a spot where you're putting like a surface bar, like right up in here, and you're raising your eyebrow, and like there's the movement changes and the angle changes, or it spreads apart, it's going to probably reject. Now, that's why you want to find a spot that works the best, where you raise your eyebrows and it's going to kind of stay pretty stationary. Now, as far as the type of jewelry, I'm going to say a surface bar. And a surface bar, I'm drawing a picture here for you. It's like a Ninja Turtle happy face almost. This is a surface bar where it has the right angle and the bar goes flat all the way across the middle. This is a curved barbell. A lot of time curved barbells can reject. Now, I've done a mix in the past where I've taken a curved barbell and I've kind of flattened it out in the middle. So it's in between, but it still has like a little bit of a 45-degree lift on the edge. They can work, but optimally, this is what we're looking for. Now, if you're doing this, really seek out the surface bars that have the flat on the undersurface. If it's a round bar, stock bar going through the middle, a lot of times you can see it. So you want a 16 gauge and you want it flat on the inside. Now, I'm not a big fan of the flat bars that have the holes drilled in there, like the dermal anchors, where it anchors it into place. Get the ones that can be removed without causing too much trauma. Does that make sense?
Yes,
what I said, Jared? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Jai has a question. We touched on this earlier, but there's no reason not to mention it again because there's all those new viewers churning in and out. And big hugs from Venezuela.
Hey, Venezuela, big hugs back.
All right. Been thinking about getting a Smiley with their significant other, but they're afraid of gum erosion. So any thoughts on a safe piercing? Is that a concern with a Smiley?
Yes, it is always a concern. The big concern is getting the gum erosion because you have jewelry resting up against it. Now, when I do the piercing, I typically pull the lip out and you're going to see that web. I don't place it up against the gums. I go closer towards the lip so it hangs a little tiny bit more. Now, the second thing is once your piercing's healed up, change it out to a seamless ring, a clicker, something where it doesn't have the beads. Because if the beads are rubbing up against it, that's going to cause that erosion, and that's what's going to cause your problems. Now, if the jewelry's hanging there and there's nothing really pressing up against there too much, I got a couple hiccups there. If it's pressing up against there, that will cause a problem. So check on it once in a while. If it seems like you lift it up and you can see an indent where it's resting in there, get that stuff out of there. So it could work out. And another thing to be aware of is when you look at your Smiley, make sure you have enough tissue to pierce. Some people barely have enough skin there where I could get the piercing in, but they end up falling and rejecting out within a couple of weeks. So make sure there's enough tissue to actually pierce too.
So Agatha has a problem.
Oh no.
Getting their nipples pierced next week. Very, very terrified and anxious.
Okay.
Their piercer is very good, super experienced, but is not very comforting, is super cold. And is there anything like, what do you recommend? Like how can Agatha chill out and relax? Because the piercer is not going to do much comforting. But
okay.
But she does seem confident that he's going to do a good job.
I understand that. And maybe you should do some research and see if there is another piercer who might be more comforting for this. You're going to have to do your homework and research and find out that they're actually qualified, go through all the reviews, all the things. But there are piercers who are going to kind of have that whole motherly type thing, who are going to walk you through and be more comforting. Some are a little bit more cold and just like, this is what you want. It's done clean. It's done properly. It's done. Some people want to do the whole tribal ritual. You know, every piercer has a different style and it's what you're comfortable with. It's up to you. Can you surrender to their experience? Can you bring a friend with you to know that everything's gonna be like, and close your eyes and just do your best to get it over with, knowing it's done right? Or do you need to seek out someone who's going to be more comforting towards you to make you feel more comfortable?
So yeah, like, so let's say, for example, there is no other piercer and Agatha's stuck with the person that they're stuck with. Okay, so now say that we just have to deal with that. We're going to go into a piercer. They're going to be very cold. What can I do to prepare myself? So I'm not going to get
sure.
Bring a friend. That's one good example. Somebody to hold my hand.
Bring a friend who is comforting and going to be there for you. Not someone who's going to be like, oh my God, it's a needle that big, and like, you know, because those people do exist. Don't bring those people. Bring someone you're comfortable with. Number 2, get a good night's sleep the night before. Okay, a good solid night's sleep, and book your appointment earlier for in the day. Don't do it later in the day because you don't want to think about it. Get up, eat a big breakfast, have a good full meal, have your friend there, and you're ready to go. You know, that's how the best thing. That's what I do when I get tattooed. I like a big meal the night before, a proper night's sleep, a big breakfast. Having the food in your system is energy. Having that energy allows you to deal with it. Having the person you're there comfortable with is going to allow you to deal. You obviously trust this piercer, so do everything you can to make it as least painful for yourself by being in the best mental and physical health you can.
Very good advice, Scott.
Yes.
Hey, from the UK.
Hi, UK.
Any
Everyone.
advice for a VCH?
Just what I was saying. A proper night's sleep, a friend to go with you to make sure you're comfortable, a piercer you're comfortable with. And you might have heard of the Q-tip test. It's something worth checking before you even go in. The Q-tip test is basically where you take the head of a Q-tip, you get it wet, and that head of the Q-tip needs to actually fit underneath the hood to make sure you have enough tissue to actually get pierced. Some people work themselves up a lot of nerves and whatnot and go in to get pierced, and you don't actually have the anatomy. So there actually has to be a little bit of a pocket, a flap of skin for that VCH vertical hood basically to actually support the jewelry. So do the little Q-tip test. If you look online, there's some videos.
That makes sense, because that would be disappointing to go all the way into your appointment, be all the way in there, ready to go, and the answer is, oh, sorry, you're not. You're not.
And I think on my video, the VCH, I actually show you the Q-tip test. So, so do that. But again, a good night's sleep, get pierced earlier in the morning, not crazy early. We don't wake up and want to go right to
right.
But
I see what you're saying. You don't want to think about it all day and then go in at 7 p.m. if you're nervous.
Anticipation's always the worst part. Everyone, like, oh, I thought it was going to hurt more. Everyone always thinks it too much. Yeah, it hurts, but it's not as bad as you're expecting.
Awesome.
Yes.
Mariola, is it possible to heal a septum piercing when you have it hidden up in your nose all the time? Does that affect the piercing?
Yes. No, it doesn't affect with any issues or problems. It minimizes the amount of movement. Now, some people will get pierced with a surface staple, basically, which doesn't have the beads. It's just like a little tiny U. And some people do the actual circular barbell. I prefer the circular barbell, and I will sometimes open or adjust the ring so it opens just enough to fit inside their nose. And when you pull your upper lip down, it makes your septum nice and thin. And when you relax, it goes thicker. So I make it so you pull it thin, it fits up, and it won't fall down. Now, once it's up, generally it doesn't have the ability to move around, and therefore you're not going to pull the crusties through, and it allows it to heal a little bit nicer. Now, I don't want you moving it up and down throughout the day. Number one, I don't want you touching the piercing. Two, if you're pulling crusties because you're moving it, that will cause irritation. Now, what I tell a lot of my customers is it's fun to show off your new piercing. You can wear it down during the day, but if you're having problems, clean it, flip it up, and then try to leave it be. The less it moves, the less it irritates, the faster it can heal. These can be healed up in about a month, month and a half, but if it's constantly being irritated and moving around, it's going to take longer than that. So be nice to your piercing, but yes, for sure, the more it's up, the less it moves, and the faster and better it'll heal.
So up's actually better, you'd say.
There's
no negative to leaving it up all the time until it's healed.
The only negative is you can't show it off. Even when it's flipped up, you're like looking up there. Sometimes I can't even see it. Like I literally have to kind of dig around to find out where it's at. It's unbelievable how hidden they can be.
Which is one of the things I think you mentioned. One of the whole truth that makes that a kind of a cool piercing.
It really does. It really does.
All right. What process do you use to stretch lobes on already healed ears? We saw you stretch new piercings where you just crammed it right through. But what about those who are coming in for a stretch who already had their lobes pierced for a long time?
For sure. That is the wrong way to stretch. Don't ever just cram it through there. That's the worst way. Now, the only reason I did it in that one is because it's an open wound, just like you said, and it's going to kind of rip a little bit of that tissue, but it's already pre-cut and there's not existing scar tissue or that fistula in there. Now, a proper stretch, I'm not a fan of tapers. A taper is a metal pin, generally about 2, maybe up to 3 inches long, where it's a tapered, starts real thin and goes up to the same thickness as your jewelry. Some people will use these as jewelry and wear those around, but this is how people rip and tear their piercings. So don't use this as jewelry. It's a tool. Just like you don't want to wear a hammer in your ear to wear it off as jewelry. Don't wear a taper in your ear as jewelry. But anyways, a proper stretch doesn't hurt. In the shower, in a warm bath, after a warm soak, after you've had your jewelry, your piercing at that size for a month and a half to 2 months, you might be able to just slide your next jewelry in. Some earrings are thicker, some are thinner, and you can go back and forth between the two without too many issues. This situation, you only go to the thicker. So a month and a half later, if it seems like you get the thicker one in there, just put it in there. It might be tight for a day, but by the end of the day, like a pair of tight pants, they do loosen up a little tiny bit.
Reference Point has a procedure coming up and will be required to remove their septum piercing for at least 45 minutes.
Okay.
They were originally pierced on July 2nd, got it stretched out at the start of October. So it's not even tiny, it's been stretched a little. Is it possible that it's going to close up in that 45 minutes anyway?
It possibly could. Now, if your procedure is right around your nose or it's been on your nose, you could lose that piercing. Now, if it's not on there, seek out a glass retainer. I think they even make acrylic or plastic retainers, which will hold the hole open. And I know for a fact that they come in larger size. What do you say, 12 gauge? 14 gauge?
We don't have an answer, just that it has been stretched up from whatever it was pierced at.
And if it was pierced at a really big size, like you had it pierced at an 8, you stretched to a 6. They even make plugs that are made out of glass or plastic. So there's many options. I would get a retainer or some sort of plug to put in there to hold the hole
So
open.
in a lot of cases, a doctor will allow a plastic or glass.
If it's not in that area. If you're working on the nose and it interferes,
They're going to want that
then they
out.
want it out. But the thing is, they don't want metal inside there. And I think the whole premise behind getting the metal out is if you're being put under any sort of anesthetics or something, if you have an allergic reaction and they have to use defibrilizers, the electricity, it can burn holes in where the metal is. And sometimes it can arc the electricity, pulling it away from the heart, like nipple piercings. So they're not actually shocking the heart, and it could
interfere in some way.
So understandable, get the metal out of there, save the life first. But that's why glass or acrylic or plastic is generally accepted, unless it's right on the area they're working.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right. And Chase said, thanks for answering the question. They're actually at around 10 millimeter now and have some teardrop plugs to try. So they're going to try what you suggested.
Excellent.
Kind of pointing the directions around and matching them up.
And, maybe even take pictures of it, like every week or every couple weeks, take pictures and see the reference there and let us know how it does.
That's true. Because it'd be easy to not notice that it's moving. But if you take pictures at some kind of regular interval.
Correct. And if you have those plugs, those teardrop plugs, you can actually start putting tape around those teardrops and able to stretch with those already in that pre-shape. So it's kind of cool. Back in the day, we had to make our own teardrop plugs.
Okay, so I'm a Lemon says that they want ring lip piercings, but they're confused about the placement of them. They thought that they had to be pierced at a vertical angle right under the lip, but then someone told them that it should be at an angle.
No.
Is that true?
Okay. I get to draw some more. Okay. Now this, if you can imagine, is a lip. If we did an angle, the ring is going to stick out like so. Okay, you see how that works? Now, if we pierce like a normal labret where you have that and there, the ring will fit around your lip, hugging it all the way around. So if you want it to look like it's snug and hugging, you need to figure out the width of your lip. Sometimes it's 5/16 of an inch wide. Sometimes it's 3/8. Your piercer should be able to measure. And then you want to pierce the same depth down, and therefore you'll be able to wear the ring where it's actually snug on your lip. If you do a vertical lip piercing, like with a curved barbell in the front, the ring is going to stick way outside your lip and it's not going to look correct. So that is the proper way to pierce with a ring.
If the look you want is real snug around your lip, it's got to be perpendicular to your lip.
Yeah. And another thing that some piercers will do is a ring placement, like a placement ring, where you can take like a normal cap to bead ring, take the bead off there, and put the ring on your lip exactly where you want it. And then if you take a marker, mark on the front and mark the back, you take the ring out. Now you're placed exactly where that ring will lay when it's healed up. And most likely it's going to be straight in for you.
All right. Hang on.
Cool.
Things got crazy there for a second.
A lot of comments. And hey, where's everyone from? Say in the comments, what country you're from, what state. That'd be kind of fun to see where everyone's from. There's been a couple shout outs, UK and where was the other one?
So lots of different comments from different countries.
Really?
Actually, yeah.
That's super cool.
Venezuela was the
Venezuela is the shout out, yeah.
So Ashley Nicole wants to know if they're going to get a double snug piercing. Should they get them both done at the same time or hit one, let it heal, do the second?
Now, I would answer this in two different ways. When you say double snug, I'm assuming they're both on one ear. If that is the case, I would hit them both at the same time because it's going to be swollen and that's a long healing process. And I wouldn't want to do that thing necessarily 2 times. Now, the exception is if you're doing double, one on left and one on your right, I personally like a side to at least sleep on. I know that doubles the healing process, but I mean, stuck on your back or your face for a year kind of sucks.
That makes sense.
It
so do one side, sleep on the other.
Yeah. If it's double on one side, do them both at the same time. If it's one over here, And then, and the thing is some people will get a snug and like, oh, I can sleep on it after a couple months and it's not causing problems. Cool, let's get started with the other one. But expect a long healing process.
So if someone has already had earlobe piercings and cartilage piercings, what can they expect from a belly button? Is it going to be much worse? Is it going to be the same ballpark?
It's in between. Cartilage piercings take a long time to heal because there's not a lot of blood flow. They don't have a lot of forgiveness if they get bumped or hit. Earlobes have more blood flow and it's real soft tissue, so it kind of has a similar to what the belly button is. Now, the thing about the belly button, it has to do with the pants you're wearing. If you're wearing high-waisted pants where it's rubbing right up against your belly button, you're going to have a long, rough healing process like a cartilage piercing. If you're wearing low-rise pants where your clothes aren't really rubbing or causing problems, it could be closer to the earlobe where it's going to be a couple months, So that's kind of the biggest factor is the clothes you're wearing. But the actual piercing probably feel closer to the earlobe than the cartilage. Cartilage should hurt more than the actual belly button.
So Levi is curious about solid gold jewelry like BVLA.
Sure.
Does it ever break down or change colors after years of showering or cleaning?
100% it does. And it's not the end of the world. Gold is going to oxidize. Now, when you first put it in, it's going to have that super bright luster and it looks fantastic. Now, over time, it's going to get more and more yellow or more and more whatever color you have in there, whether it's white, rose gold, or the yellow gold, but it does tarnish. I couldn't wait any longer. My eyebrow piercings for a while ago, I actually took out and I put some green titanium barbells in there because my eyebrows were getting irritated because it started oxidizing and getting that little bit of irritation because it's not as
smooth. Rough makes the surface rough, I'm sure.
Surface rough, exactly. But what I did is I took a polishing cloth, a metal polishing cloth for gold, and you rub it in there, and it brought the luster and the shine back just like they're brand new. So sometimes you do need to remove it, get in there, and actually repolish up your jewelry. A lot of people do this for wedding rings too. They say bring it in every 6 months or a year to have it cleaned and polished and so forth. Because it does oxidize. You are going to get stuff in there and it doesn't look as good as day one, but that doesn't mean you can't bring it back. Now, big disclaimer here for you. You're talking about solid gold jewelry. You can polish that up. Do not take these polishing rags to plated jewelry. So if you have something that's 24 karat plated or 14 karat plated, that's a real thin plating. And when you polish it, you're taking that thin plate off and you're going to take some of that color out of there. So don't do that to the plated jewelry, just the solid gold. That was a good point you brought up. But it does happen.
All right. So Valentina got a tongue web. Feels like it's healed, but it's still a little swollen. Is it ever going to go back to as thin as it was, or is it maybe going to stay thick now? Or
a little bit thick. The thing is we healed that fistula and that tube of scar tissue through there. Some people's webs are so paper thin to start off with that it's almost inevitable that it's going to go to the twice that thickness just because it healed that tube of scar tissue through there. So if you took it out, chances are that fistula and everything would go back to the original thickness. You might feel a little tiny bit of a bump, but it's probably going to stay there if it feels like it's all the way healed up.
All right.
All the way healed up like several months too, by the way, not a couple weeks.
Saul has a blowout on a stretched ear. Recommendations? What can be done?
Yes. You need to downsize. Back step 1, maybe 2 sizes. You need to massage that blowout, get the blood flow back in there, and give it some time before you stretch. That blowout's going to be coming back easily each time you stretch, and you need to be very careful. Now, what we're talking about with the blowout is, let's see here, is when you stretch your ears and you have like a plug, sometimes when you're pushing the plug from the front to the back, you have that tube of scar tissue and you kind of push it out the back. Sometimes when you look at piercings and like a nostril, if you push on the inside, you almost see that little ring or that tube kind of sticking out. That's what we're talking about. And if you keep pushing from front to back really tight, it pushes it out the back. Now, if you massage and you get the blood flow, it can kind of go back, but you need to keep that tissue massaged and not overstretch again. You got to be careful. Once it's there, they're so easy to come back, but it's not the end of the world.
All right. So Will has been told that his tragus is big enough for a double. Really wants to do it, but worried about sleeping on it because they are a side sleeper.
Okay.
So.
There again, it's like if you can sleep on your other side for quite a while, that's going to be your best bet. If your piercer said you have the anatomy for a double tragus, which is this little nub right here on the side of your ear, they're going to want to place the dots initially for the two, and you should have the room for the swelling. It might take a smidge longer for the whole healing process, but if you heal it up properly, you're still going to be healed in probably 3 to 6 months if it's not being irritated by earphones, earbuds, or you're hitting on things or sleeping on it. That's the big thing. If you're sleeping on it, it's going to be a long healing process.
All right. Anna needs some advice.
Sure.
Has an ear piercing appointment tomorrow, but it's not nailed down exactly what we'll be getting.
Okay.
Anna wears glasses. Anna also has headphones in a lot. So what piercings do you recommend on the ear that glasses and headphones are going to do minimal damage to?
Now the headphones, I'm assuming we're talking in earbuds, not the over the ear. So if it's the in earbuds, that's going to cause a problem with the doth piercing and your tragus piercing. If they are the over the earbuds, or not the over the ear, those are some big buds. If they're the over the ear earphones, you're probably going to have problems with the outer helix area. So that kind of determines there. Now, conch piercings will probably work for all of them. Rook piercings will work really well. Possible earlobe piercings. Forward helix and industrial piercings might cause problems with the glasses. Just be aware that if you're doing the helix, like how your ears fold out and where the glasses lay. So that kind of answers. So there's a couple.
A lot
options.
of it depends on like the type of headphones.
The type of headphones.
If they're the big
earbuds.
ones, you can get the inside pierced. If they're the buds, then you can get the outside.
If they're buds, definitely no tragus. Definitely no. Definitely don't get the doff. Yeah. Otherwise, you should be okay with most of the rest.
Excellent. Greetings from Argentina.
Hi, Argentina.
Gilco has one ear that's at 18 millimeters, all stretched up. The other ear isn't even pierced.
Okay.
So they're thinking about it. What do you think? Should they even it up, get the other pierced, and then like how fast could they stretch it? Like how long would it be until they were symmetrical if they wanted to run the other one all the way up to 18 millimeters?
Well, okay. So if you only have one already, it doesn't seem like you're a person that's really worried about symmetry, which gives you a lot of options. Having one ear stretched to the large, what you said, 18 millimeters?
18 millimeters.
Okay. Maybe doing the other one with 3 piercings, gradually going bigger. Or maybe we could stack or create a design in the other earlobe and not have to have those as stretched, but still takes up the same surface area. So instead of having, a plug in one, we could have 3 plugs in the other. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So and it still takes up the same surface area and you get to that balanced, but it's not symmetry. Now, if you wanted symmetry and you're going to leave your ears large for a long time, you could pierce it a large size. I will go all the way up to a 0 gauge. I'm really bad at my millimeter conversion. I'm not sure what that is, like 6 millimeters or I think 5 or 6, somewhere around there. But anyways, that gets you a head start, and then you can stretch up to that size, and that might take you, another year.
0 gauge is 8.25 millimeters.
Way off, yeah. So that gets you, you're halfway there then. So that kind of answers that. So there's options, but like doing like the stacked or the gradual all the way up, or you could even like pierce at a normal size and get really large tops to kind of help balance until you get stretched all the way up to that size, so it's a lot of options.
All right. Anton got an anti-eyebrow with 2 dermals and thinks it's placed too low. Has mentioned this to their piercer. The piercer says it's probably going to reject because they've done the test. And when Anton closes the eyes, squints real hard.
Yes.
It wrinkles
goes into
up.
The crease.
Right. And so the piercer has said it can't be any higher because of that scrunching. Anton thinks it looks too low. What do you think? Can he go higher anyway? Or is that a bad idea? Is his piercer right?
I agree with your piercer. If it's in those little creases, the little wrinkles, it's changing the shape and it's going to cause it to reject out. It's not going to work out in your favor. You can get kind of close to them, but not in them. So if it's in them, I agree with your piercer. If you can move it up a little bit, go for it. Something to keep in mind, though. If you're moving it up like 4 or 5 millimeters, you're going to see the scar of the other dermal below, and you're just creating more dots on your face as well. So is that something that's also, and there is no right or wrong. It's what you're happy with. If you're not happy, do what you need to do.
All right. So some piercers you agree with, some piercers you disagree with. Our next question is from Tracy. Tracy's piercer told them to take their jewelry out of their new lobe piercing after 2 weeks, clean that piercing up, rinse that hole up. And from personal research, Tracy has noticed that most people are saying don't do that.
I agree. This time I say your piercer is wrong. You're trying to heal a fistula, which is a tube of scar tissue from the front to the back, and it takes time for that tube to get thick. Of all my training, the doctors, surgeons, and medical professionals, they say it takes a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks for that to get thick enough to prevent infections and other problems. That's when they say it's technically healed. Now, taking it in and out to clean after a couple weeks, it's easy to rip and tear that tissue, and that will cause the dreaded piercing bump or irritation bump on the front or back of your piercing. So your best bet is quality piece of jewelry in there. Leave it in there the whole healing time, 6 to 8 weeks minimum before you even think about taking it out. If you have proper jewelry where it's long enough, room enough for swelling, you don't need to worry about taking it out to clean, because you should be able to kind of move it or kind of drain a lot of that stuff out of there naturally. Shouldn't be trapped. But
So,
you're right. You did research. Good job.
Keisha got a tragus piercing, but their piercer used a 20 gauge needle. However, Keisha wishes to wear 16 gauge rings. Can she stretch her tragus, or does this need to be re-pierced at the larger size?
No, you can totally stretch it. It's generally not easy to stretch cartilage, but it can be done. I actually had mine done. I overstretched mine, but I had mine all the way up to a 4 gauge. Now, if you have a 20 gauge in there, I'm guessing you probably have a ring in there. I don't know if they're making 20 gauge studs in there, but once you're fully healed up, 3 to 6 months, go up to the 18 gauge, get an 18 gauge stud or a ring or whatever you want to put in there to stretch it, and then give it a couple more months, another 3 or 4 months, and then you should be able to stretch it up to the 16 gauge without too much of a problem. But don't start stretching until you're all the way healed up. And then once you stretch up, it might be sore or tender for a week, maybe even a couple weeks before it calms down. Once it's so calmed down where it moves freely again after several months, then you can go up to that 16. It can be done. Yes.
All right. So we have a person here who wants to stretch their lobes up. But right now they feel like the existing holes they have, just small, are in the wrong spot. They're too low. Can they just re-pierce a new hole in the center of their lobes and begin their stretch from there?
Yes, as long as it's not too close to the old existing holes. In a situation like this, I'm going to suggest that you massage and you try to play with your piercings as much as you can. Without jewelry in, try to break up that scar tissue and see if you can get them to close. Sometimes it hurts to really kind of massage and break it down, but that's what you kind of need to do. Now, if it's right next to it and you start stretching, a lot of times it falls into that old hole, and then you kind of in the same situation. So it's kind of tough.
What's the usual size that an eyebrow piercing is pierced at? We have Will here, got it pierced, and wants to know what jewelry was likely used because he's not sure.
Chances are it's probably a 16 gauge, 5/16 of an inch, or 3/8 of an inch. Those are the two most common sizes. But there are piercers out there who will pierce thicker, some will pierce thinner, and there's also people who pierce way deeper as well. So, but 16 gauge, 5/16 to 3/8 is a real common size.
All right. Any emu oil alternatives for healing or reducing discoloration? Got an eyebrow piercing that isn't doing too well. It was pierced with low quality jewelry, but now that's been changed out for better quality jewelry. Should they be rubbing stuff on it, or do you think just keep it clean, leave it alone?
That's a tough call. It depends on how healed your piercing is. If it's fully healed and you just have some scarring on there, it might help a little tiny bit. But if the damage is done, the damage is done. Depends on how old it is. If it's a newer piercing, a little emu oil might help it out. If it's pretty established, it might be kind of stuck and the damage is done. So
Sanja has an interesting one. Got a nostril piercing, wasn't really very scared. It didn't even really hurt that much, but they did nearly pass out and suddenly felt sick. Does that happen often? Is that something they need to be like concerned about happening again in future piercings?
No. I'm willing to bet that you were extremely nervous when you went in to get pierced. A lot of us are very nervous. Some of us show it more than others. Some of us really, really get inside our head. Now, if people ever pass out, the last thing they ever say right before they pass out, I'm sure every piercer can attest to this, is, that didn't hurt a bit. And then they go out, which says it's all in your head. Now, here's the deal. We come in to get pierced, and we're getting ready for all this pain. This is going to be such a crazy experience. It's going to be so traumatic. And we're building up all this adrenaline inside our body. Our body's getting ready for this crazy amount of pain. And when that crazy amount of pain doesn't happen, that adrenaline gets released in your body, and your body just kind of shuts down. It's sometimes it's just too much for us to handle. That's the adrenaline rush that everyone gets when they get pierced. Some people handle it really well. Some people actually pass out from it, but that's kind of what's going on. So very rarely have I ever had someone pass out from the actual pain. But some people are just afraid of needles too, and it's a psychological thing, knowing that a needle is going to be piercing them. So I generally tell people you get pierced with a piercing tool. I don't say the word needle if I can help it, because sometimes that is a factor. But yeah, it does happen. The more calm or relaxed you are, the easier the piercing experience will go. And let your piercer know. Say, hey, last time I came in, I got real lightheaded. Don't jump to your feet right away. Stay laying down. Have some food in your system. Sometimes if you don't eat and you don't have the energy, you're more prone to passing out. So sleep, food, and try to surrender the experience.
All right. Time has flown, and it has been an hour and a half. So we only have time for one more question. Okay. Sorry to everyone who we didn't get to your question this time. Come back next time, and we will try to get to you.
We're doing this next week?
Yeah.
Let's do it again next week. Same time, same place. So,
all right. And so for our last question, Heidi wants to know.
Okay, Heidi.
She's 48 years old. Are there any piercings that you think she's too old to get? Whether that would mean from like thinner skin in some places as we age, or maybe something that just looks better on a younger person that you wouldn't recommend. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. My only opinion with age and piercing is the older we get, the tougher it is to heal some of these things. Our immune systems, we don't bounce back as fast. That's it. If you want it, get it. That's my suggestion. I'm pretty much that age too. And it's like, I'm not slowing down. I get what I want. And I don't care oh, you're too old to get this piercing. No, you're not. Age is in your head. I think piercing has kept me young and kept me alive. So if you've always wanted your belly button pierced, get it done. If you want a lip piercing, get it done. Of course, job allowed, some jobs don't allow certain things, but yeah, there's no real age restriction. Now, as far as skin getting thin and things like that, if you don't have anatomy for certain piercing, the piercer will tell you. But generally, if you have the anatomy, you still can probably get pierced. Great question. So all ages, all races, all styles, everyone can get pierced, and that's the greatest thing about piercing. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And again, we're going to be doing this next week. And awesome. Remember, keep putting holes in your body. See y'all in the next video.